The bright lights of the Good Morning America studio in New York City buzzed with energy as Blake Shelton, the country music superstar, took his seat across from George Stephanopoulos, the seasoned journalist known for his sharp questioning. The audience, a mix of loyal fans and curious morning viewers, clapped enthusiastically, expecting a fun chat about Blake's latest album and his life after The Voice. Dressed in his signature plaid shirt and cowboy hat, Blake flashed his trademark grin, exuding charm and ease as the cameras rolled. George, polished in a suit, opened with a warm introduction, praising Blake's decades-long career and his influence on country music. But the friendly vibe didn't last long. George shifted gears, asking about Blake's recent comments on the evolving sound of country music, specifically quotes that some interpreted as critical of newer artists. "You've said the genre's changing too fast, so some call that gatekeeping," George said, his tone calm but pointed, referencing online buzz without citing specific sources. Blake's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing as he leaned back in his chair. "I never said I'm against change," he replied, his Oklahoma drawl tinged with irritation. "I just think we gotta respect the roots." The audience shifted, sensing the tension, their murmurs barely audible over the studio's hum. George didn't let up, pressing Blake on whether his remarks were aimed at younger artists, particularly women and artists of color, who've been pushing boundaries in the genre. Blake's jaw tightened, and he chuckled, a sound more defensive than amused. "You're twisting my words, George," he said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm talking about music, not people." The crowd stirred, some nodding in support, others whispering about the unexpected edge in Blake's tone. George, unfazed, leaned forward, his journalist's instincts kicking in. "But when you say a roots, some hear exclusion," he countered, citing no direct source but clearly tapping into the cultural debate swirling online. Blake's face reddened, and he shot back, "I'm not excluding any, I'm saying country's got a soul, and we can't lose that." The exchange was no longer a casual morning show chat, it was a verbal showdown, and the studio felt electric. The audience, torn between shock and excitement, watched as Blake's laid-back demeanor gave way to frustration. George, ever the professional, pushed further, asking if Blake felt his influence as a country icon carried a responsibility to embrace new voices. "I'm not here to babysit the industry," Blake snapped, his voice booming, startling some in the crowd. "I make music, not headlines." The gasps were audible now, phones discreetly recording as the moment unfolded. George, calm but unrelenting, asked, "Do you think your fans see it that way, or are you risking alienating them?" Blake's eyes flashed with anger, and he leaned forward, pointing a finger. "You're trying to make me the bad guy, and I ain't playing the game." The tension was palpable, the audience holding its breath as producers in the control room exchanged frantic glances. Blake's chair scraped as he shifted, his body language screaming discomfort. The segment was teetering on the edge of chaos, and George, sensing the moment, tried to pivot to Blake's new album. But Blake wasn't having it. "You wanna talk music, or you just wanna stir the pot?" he demanded, his voice loud enough to echo through the studio. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and murmurs, some fans cheering Blake's defiance, others stunned by his outburst. George, maintaining his composure, offered a tight smile. "We're just talking, Blake," he said, but the words did little to cool the heat. As the show cut to a commercial break, the studio buzzed with whispers, and social media was already lighting up with clips of the clash. Backstage, Blake's team huddled, their faces tense, while George reviewed his notes, unfazed by the drama. This was morning television, but it felt like a high-stakes debate, and the world was about to tune in to see what happened next. As Good Morning America returned from commercial, the studio lights seemed brighter, the air heavier with anticipation. The audience, still reeling from the heated exchange between Blake Shelton and George Stephanopoulos, leaned forward, their eyes darting between the two men. Blake, visibly agitated, adjusted his hat, his jaw set as he stared down George, who sat composed, his notes neatly stacked in front of him. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of emotion as George dove back in, attempting to steer the conversation toward Blake's new tour. "Let's talk about your fans. They're excited for this new chapter," George said, his tone conciliatory but firm. Blake nodded curtly, but his eyes told a different story, burning with frustration from the earlier round. "My fans know I'm real," he said, his voice steady but laced with defiance. "They don't need me to play nice for the cameras." The audience murmured, some clapping in support, others unsure how to react to Blake's intensity. George, sensing an opportunity to dig deeper, shifted to a question about Blake's role as a mentor on The Voice and whether he felt a duty to uplift new talent. "You've been a gatekeeper of sorts there, too," George said, his words carefully chosen but sharp, hinting at the earlier controversy without repeating it. Blake's face darkened, and he leaned forward, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "Gatekeeper? I've spent years helping kids chase their dreams," he said, his voice rising again. "Don't paint me as the guy holding anyone back." The crowd gasped, the tension now a living thing in the studio, as Blake's words carried a raw edge that daytime TV rarely saw. George, undeterred, pressed on, asking if Blake's outspokenness ever backfired with fans who wanted him to stay out of industry debates. "You're a voice people listen to," George said, echoing a sentiment from online chatter about Blake's influence. Blake's response was immediate, his voice booming. "I'm a singer, not a politician, George. Why's everyone trying to make me something I'm not?" The audience erupted, some cheering Blake's authenticity, others shocked by his volume. Social media was already exploding, with hashtags like #BlakeVs.George trending as clips of the exchange spread like wildfire. George, ever the journalist, tried to pivot again, asking about Blake's life with Gwen Stefani and their Oklahoma ranch, hoping to lighten the mood. But Blake was done playing along. "You wanna talk my life? Fine, but don't twist it into some gotcha moment," he snapped, his finger jabbing the air. The crowd's reaction was split as some fans roared in support, others whispered about Blake's temper. George, maintaining his cool, asked one more question. "Do you think moments like this help your fans see the real you, or do they just fuel the headlines?" That was the breaking point. Blake's face flushed, and he stood abruptly, yanking off his mic. "I'm done with this," he growled, his voice echoing as he stormed off the set, his boots thudding against the studio floor. The audience gasped, cameras panning to catch his exit, while George sat back, his expression a mix of surprise and calm resolve. "Well, that's a first," George said, his voice steady as he signaled for a commercial break. Backstage, chaos erupted. Blake's team rushed to his side, producers scrambled to fill the airtime, and the audience buzzed with excitement, their phones capturing every second. On X, posts were already flooding in, with users split between praising Blake's realness and slamming his meltdown. One tweet read, "Blake Shelton just owned George. That's how you stand up to media traps." While another said, "Blake's temper tantrum on GMA was embarrassing. A grow-up." The viral moment was unstoppable, with clips racking up millions of views within hours. George, left alone on set, addressed the audience briefly, his tone professional but tinged with regret. "We aim for real conversations here, and sometimes they get heated," he said, earning scattered applause. Behind the scenes, Blake was reportedly furious, muttering about gotcha journalism as his team planned damage control. The internet, meanwhile, was a battlefield of opinions, with fans and critics dissecting every word, gesture, and glance. This wasn't just a morning show interview gone wrong, it was a cultural flashpoint, and the world was watching to see what Blake would do next. The fallout from Blake Shelton's dramatic walk-off on Good Morning America was instantaneous, the internet erupting with reactions as clips of his clash with George Stephanopoulos dominated social media. The studio, still buzzing from the chaos, fell into a stunned silence as the cameras cut to commercial, the audience whispering furiously about what they'd just seen. George, ever the professional, took a sip of coffee, his face betraying no panic, though his eyes scanned the crowd, gauging their reactions. Producers swarmed the control room, their headsets alive with urgent chatter, while Blake's team huddled backstage, their phones lighting up with notifications as news outlets began churning out headlines. On X, the debate was in full swing, with posts praising Blake's raw honesty. He called out George's baiting questions, legend, while others slammed him for losing his cool, Blake Shelton just threw a tantrum on live TV. Not a good look. The polarized reactions mirrored the broader divide over Blake's public persona, with fans defending his authenticity and critics accusing him of dodging accountability. Back on set, as the show resumed, George addressed the audience directly, his voice steady but measured. "We strive to have honest conversations, and sometimes they don't go as planned," he said, his words carefully chosen to diffuse the tension without dismissing the drama. The audience clapped, some hesitantly, others enthusiastically, but the moment felt like a temporary truce. Offstage, Blake was reportedly in a private room, pacing as his team drafted statements to spin the narrative. Sources close to the production, speaking anonymously, claimed Blake felt blindsided by George's line of questioning, expecting a lighthearted chat about his music, not a grilling on industry politics. Others suggested George had been encouraged to push hard, knowing a viral moment would boost GMA's ratings. Whatever the truth, the clash had sparked a firestorm, with headlines screaming Blake Shelton storms off GMA, and George Stephanopoulos pushes Blake to breaking point. Social media was relentless, with memes of Blake's mic drop moment and George's calm demeanor flooding every platform. Analysts on entertainment blogs speculated about the fallout, noting that Blake's walk-off could either solidify his image as a no-nonsense country star or fuel criticism that he couldn't handle scrutiny. Meanwhile, GMA's team quietly celebrated the ratings spike, knowing the episode would dominate water cooler talk for days. As the story spread, questions swirled. Had George gone too far, or was Blake's reaction overblown? Was this a genuine clash of perspectives or a staged spectacle for clicks? The truth was murky, but the public wasn't interested in nuance yet, they wanted drama, and this moment delivered. By the next day, the story had gone global, with international outlets picking up the clip and talk show hosts weighing in. Blake's supporters rallied, arguing he'd been unfairly targeted, while detractors pointed to the incident as proof of his thin skin. George, for his part, remained silent on social media, letting GMA's official statement "We value open dialogue and respect our guests" speak for itself. But the internet wasn't letting go, with hashtags like #BlakeWalkout and #GeorgeVS.Blake trending worldwide. The incident had become a cultural moment, sparking debates about journalistic ethics, celebrity accountability, and the state of country music. Some fans launched campaigns to boost Blake's new album, while others dug up old interviews to paint a pattern of defensiveness. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: this wasn't just a morning show mishap, it was a turning point in Blake's public narrative, and the repercussions would echo for weeks. The world waited for Blake's next move, whether a fiery tweet, a heartfelt apology, or a return to the stage, while GMA basked in the glow of its most controversial episode yet.